ranchers have a real purpose and cowboys have a real purpose. They're the people that feed you. And I always say, if you're lucky enough to meet one, well, that's God blessing you.
Welcome back to Cowgirl Beyond, the official podcast of the National Cowgirl Museum and Hall of Fame, where we go beyond the exhibits to share the untold stories of women shaping the West. In today's episode, Sarahmarge Wink Crigler is a fourth-generation rancher and the heart behind Arizona's historic X-Diamond Ranch, a place where conservation, cattle, and community come together. From her early days as a teacher and a horsewoman to becoming one of the most respected stewards of the Western land, Wink has dedicated her life to preserving both the natural landscape and the traditions that ride alongside it. She's the founder of the Little House Museum, co-founder of the Ranching Heritage Alliance, and the recipient of the National Rangeland Management Award. In this episode, Wink shares the stories from her life on the ranch, what it means to protect the land for future generations, the lessons learned from her father's wisdom, and why the cowboy way is, what she says, the only life we ever knew. Join us for a journey through the high country of Arizona with a true guardian of the West. This is Cowgirl Beyond with Wink Crigler.
Thank you.
Of course. And Wink, we always start with an icebreaker.
Okay.
Just a fun little question to kick everything off. And I wanted to ask you, because your family has always raised beef, what is your favorite cut of beef?
Well, I just like a really good hamburger.
Oh my goodness, there you go. As simple as that, right?
Just as simple as that.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And you came today with one of your new books. First off, congratulations.
Thank you.
And we've been able to see a couple of the works that you've done previously, but you were telling us about this one specifically and the message that it has. So share a little bit about that with us.
Well, my whole advocacy for the ranch is ranch life and helping people understand that ranches are not just places where you gallop across the range and sing Ride No Paint. Ranches have a real purpose and cowboys have a real purpose. They're the people that feed you. And I always say, if you're lucky enough to meet one, well, that's God blessing you. But he was singing that song. The title of my new book is a song that I feel like for food security in America, we really all have to understand and look to, because as our productive lands diminish due to development and other government mandates and so on, we really have to figure out how to preserve the functionality and the sustainability of the landscapes, because the bottom line is not only do ranches feed the people, they also provide recreational area, they contribute to our watersheds, wildlife habitat, herbaceous diversity, the whole thing of natural habitat is what ranches are really made up of. Mm-hmm. And so it's been for many years my work to not only understand rangeland and the quality of our resources, but to advocate for rangeland health and cattle producers, because they can go hand in hand. Livestock produce healthy landscapes and feed the people.
Exactly. Well, we are so lucky to have you here today.
Well, thank you.
And
I thought I was lucky to be here.
Oh, no, we are so lucky and so honored to have you here. And just from what you explained right now, I think that's the importance of having this conversation, that we're able to talk about those topics that need to be discussed. And it's such a dire time, as you've mentioned. So I want to go back to the beginning of it all with you. And I know your ranch has been in your family for over 100 years, the X-Diamond Ranch. What are some of the earliest memories for you of your life on that ranch, with your grandparents, with your parents? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I guess mainly my recollections really are, since I can even barely remember, because my dad was just he was a cattleman, but he was also a real cowboy and a rancher. Yeah. And I guess my earliest recollections are always just being on that land and riding a horse, following my dad around. But at the same time, from from when I was just little, understanding the functionality of the range and what made it possible for us to be there. I guess the thing that stands out probably most in my mind is one time when I was about 6. Of course, at that time we didn't have all the trucks and fancy trailers that everybody has. We had a winter home where we lived, but then we also had a summer camp, which was about 2,500 feet higher in elevation. Wow. We ran up to 9,500 feet elevation, the cattle in summer country. And so we went mostly by horseback and often with pack outfit. And one time when I was about 6, I was lollygagging around on my horse, and I let him take me under a low-hanging branch, and he brushed me off.
No.
I can very clearly remember my dad coming back and smacking me back in the saddle and looked at me and he said, "Now, watch where you're going, not where you've been." And I've always just remembered that, watch where you're going. And with that, even though I didn't really understand it at 6, it was something that stuck in my mind. And I've always thought forward to, what can we do on the ranch? How do we sustain this legacy and make it functional and viable to be on? And that's kind of been the guiding light of my whole life, is looking ahead to see where we were going and what we could do to get there.
Yeah. Well, it's very clear that your family's legacy is very ingrained in you and that they did such a great job to everything that you've learned, you still apply to this day. Is there anything on the ranch that when you see it, it reminds you of your past family members?
Well, yeah, about everything, because you just remember the trails, you remember the days, you remember the weather, and it all reminds you of how we grew up and what we did. Not that we're new ways on an old ranch.
Yeah.
I say, but you still see the things that were historically significant in growing up and what shaped your life there. I guess I just really never knew there was anything else really but working and riding on the range and understanding what the cattle were doing and the relationship of the cattle to the landscape and then how you manage that to keep it all functional.
And I know you've mentioned that for most of your life you were on horseback.
That's true.
So, for many of us that live this ranching, well, we don't relive the true ranching lifestyle. You're a perfect example of it. But anybody that lives the Western lifestyle, we all ideally want to live our lives on horseback. And we sometimes leave school on the back burner. And I know you expressed that you rushed through school to get back to the ranch. So what drove you to complete your education?
My mom.
Nice.
She always just said, you've got to have something that you could rely on. And I always knew that I had to work too, besides be on the ranch, because my dad the ranch made a living for my dad and for my mom, but I had to be there to help. But I also knew that I had to have something I could rely on to make a living myself. But I also wanted something that would allow me to be there to work on the ranch. And I guess I never thought about being any place but on the ranch. So when I looked at educational opportunities, I wanted to look at something that I could do as well as help to sustain the ranch and maybe ultimately be in charge of protecting the integrity of the legacy and the integrity of the landscape. And so school seemed like a thing that you could do, because I could work on weekends, I could live on the ranch, work whenever I could, work in the summers and so on. And so that drove me. And it also drove me to hurry and get through as fast as I could, because I knew that I needed to be there to help sustain the ranch and help my dad with the work that there was to do. And so teaching just seemed like a a good thing to do that was compatible with the lifestyle that I really sought out.
Well, and your career as a teacher was for many years, right?
It was. I actually taught for 25 years.
Wow.
I taught all the grades, adult education, high school, and kids that couldn't read. But I always tried, in all the years that I taught, the underlying current of my education was to help kids connect their education to the landscape and the promotion of and perpetuation of a healthy landscape. Because, 5,000 years ago, Socrates wrote, agriculture is the greatest endeavor of all. And if you stop and think about it, it's the one thing we can't live without.
Yeah.
It's the essential of all life. And to be a part and to be connected to that is a real opportunity, even though in our country today there are less than 2% of us on the landscape today, feeding roughly 98% of America.
Yeah. Well, it's very evident that you have a very big purpose in life, and that you were able to, like you said, create a career that was compatible with that purpose. I'm sure you were able to teach many, many young kids about the importance of it, and that's amazing.
And I still even see a lot of them today, because one of the things we've done on the ranch to create connectivity between what a ranch does and just the general public is I also operate a small store on the ranch that we have open. And a lot of the kids that I taught in school now come to the store and buy their beef there, buy fresh eggs, fresh bread, things like that we sell in our market. All of the expansion of the ranch has been done with the idea of building connectivity between those people that don't live on a landscape like I do to the landscape, and to the necessity for protecting those landscapes with the right legislation and the right laws and so on.
Yeah.
And as well as support, because obviously a ranch has to function financially as well.
Right. Well, and I think with that, it's a good point in saying that education is a backbone to a lot of things that we do in life. Do you feel like you going to school, and even though it was something that was a little bit difficult for you to decide on whether to do or not, that you made the right decision? And what would you say to younger generations as well that may have that dilemma of helping a family business or going to school, and what advice can you give them?
Well, the way I look at it from my own experience is that you can do both. You can do both if you choose wisely and make the right decisions. Yeah. I know for a lot of young people, they look at going off to school as a lark, but I didn't ever look at education as that. I looked at what it would contribute, not only to my own well-being, but my being as to be functional on the landscape and to contribute, in essence, to society, to the well-being of people and society.
Yeah, what a great message.
And I still do a lot of teaching. I have a hall that I've built there on the ranch, and we have group events there almost every weekend. And no matter what kind of an event you have, you always have that opportunity for people to come and open their eyes to what ranches provide for people. Because my way of saying is, if a ranch isn't a ranch, it could be a condominium. And when people can come and see the uniqueness of the ranch there and just look out at the pure beauty, undisturbed, unmolested beauty of the ranch and the river and the watershed and the wildlife that come in, they can create a deeper appreciation of what these landscapes really provide. Yeah. And they also grow an appreciation for helping sustain them, because our little market has gone from being relatively small to being very, very, very busy. We sell a lot of beef there. We have a lot of people that come, and every one of them that comes leaves with a new appreciation of what landscapes provide.
Yeah, it most definitely looks like it. I've only seen the ranch in pictures, and I'm amazed at the beauty of the ranch, as well as all of the work you do on your own ranch with the Little House Museum, the books you've written on it, the market. So tell us a little bit about what led you to creating that museum. And I'm sure it goes along with that message of having people leave with all of that.
Well, I think the real underlying current of all of it was that if you really don't understand your own history, you don't really understand how you got to be what you are, because history is what's given shape to our country from the very beginning. And if we don't understand that and appreciate it, we don't know how we really got to be what we are. And so for me, it was really, how did I get to be what I am? What is the history of what I am? And so I became really rooted in understanding what brought cattle to the land, because cattle weren't native there. They didn't just happen to be there. What was the necessity for bringing cattle to our landscapes, whether you're talking about Texas or New Mexico or Arizona? There was a reason that we brought cattle onto the landscapes. There was a reason why we needed to make these landscapes valuable and productive. And so that's what really motivated me to get into the history of the ranching industry. It's not just a way of life and a culture. It has a historical background that is significant in the shaping of what we have. And it really all boiled down to the fact that we created the ranch industry in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, wherever you're talking about, to feed the people. Our wildlife populations could not sustain under the demands of feeding people. And so in order to be able to feed the military populations that came into Arizona, New Mexico, and other things, it was necessary to have a manageable, viable population of something that would provide sustenance for the people. And in our case in Arizona, it really boiled down to the fact that commencing around 1870s, we began to see military posts springing up. And with the military posts, in came the military. Well, we didn't have any livestock populations, and so historically, both the building of the railroad and the arrival of military populations relied on the wildlife populations. Well, after it didn't take long until we began to see things like the native elk on our landscape and other wildlife populations dwindle away. And in fact, the original elk that we had in Arizona was called a Merriam elk. Well, he was the biggest protein source that we had and was very, very heavily relied on by what the Army and the railroads called the Division of Hunters and Packers, because it was their job to bring in the bacon, if you would, to feed the populace of either the military posts or the railroad camps. And with the dwindling of that population, it was necessary to supplant those animals. And that was the beginning of the livestock industry in a lot of our states and on our landscapes. It was a matter of feeding the people is what it really all boiled down to. And so for me to understand how I got to be what I am, I really had to understand the background of what created my own industry. And so that's how I really got into it. And then, of course, once you get into that history, with my family having been there and been a part of all of that, then I could better understand my own family's purpose as well.
Your roots are really everything that make you who you are and where you're going to go in life. And that's so important. And I feel like that's something that we really lack nowadays, is understanding where we come from, understanding, like you mentioned, knowing where you're going in life and how that all connects and brings everything together. And I know you've been very pivotal in Arizona, especially with, the ranch being there for over 100 years and all of the work you've done. And you created the Ranching Heritage Alliance. So tell us a little bit about why you wanted to create this alliance and the impact that you've seen in the Western ranching communities due to it.
Well, the real beginning of the Ranching Heritage Alliance was over a difference of opinion, I guess you could say, on the use of rangelands, because we have advocacy groups in our country that believe that these resources should not be used for livestock grazing and so on.
Yeah.
But so when my dad died, the ranch was split up in an estate settlement. But it was my mission to recreate the ranch, the original ranch, as much as I possibly ever could. And so that I've worked on, and I was able to bring a lot of my grandparents and my dad's grazing lands back into a functional unit. But when that happened, then I met up with a lot of conflict over the use of those lands, because, as I mentioned, a lot of them are managed by government agencies. Yeah. So to get to the point where I could be sure that these lands were going to remain sustainable to livestock grazing, I had to do a lot of work, and I reached out to universities, National Riparian Service Team, lots of other agencies to try to create a collaborative group so that we all, and I say we all, meaning people with different perspectives, could come together and see the values that ranches actually have in promoting and perpetuating the values that other groups have in relationship to the ranching community and the economic services that we can continue to provide for people with different interests. And so creating the Ranching Heritage Alliance was just a way of bringing by creating a collaborative group so people could share their views, and we could create an understanding of how a lot of people's wants could be met and yet maintain them as viable livestock grazing units. And so we brought together universities, riparian service teams, wildlife services, recreational groups, and so on, all to try to create a common understanding of the values of maintaining those landscapes. Then the values, of course, the eco-services that come out of that are healthy watersheds, healthy herbaceous diversity group, plant groups, providing a product to feed the people, wildlife habitat, recreational opportunities, and et cetera, and et cetera.
Yeah. And how do you manage the balance between tradition and modern ranching practices?
Well, that's a little bit hard. I say we have to live some new ways on an old ranch in order to be able to be compliant with the restrictions that are put on you. When my dad was alive, we only had 2 fences. We separated the winter country from the summer country. Now we have to have pastures and management times and use it this time and don't use it that time and so on. So that becomes can become a bit of a conflict. But actually with the data that I have been able to accumulate on my landscape and whatnot, it's not an inhibiting factor now nearly as much as it was in the beginning stages of my management of the ranch, because I know what's going to be happening in these pastures in this time of the year versus what's going to be happening over there. And with our collaborative capacity, we pretty much always can come to a common ground.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing, Wink. I'm sure from all of the experience, it's just a journey that keeps going, and you've become an expert to it. I mean, I see you, and I really think you're a master of ranching.
Well,
so
I don't know about that. But people always say to me, because just being a woman owning and running a full-fledged ranch and so on, people often say something about why you would choose this kind of a lifestyle, because it's not ordinary for women. Yeah. But I read something once, and it said, I've often wondered how it is that punchers are not more often struck by lightning. It must be that they are not as black as they are painted. On the other hand, they tell you that the good die young. I used to ponder on this subject quite a bit while on my lonely guard, and I believe some of the Creator's greatest sermons are open to mankind, right out under the stars and the canopy of heaven. And so that's what you have to recognize, is that closeness that the lifestyle brings to you, to nature, and what I call the real world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that little excerpt that you just gave us, I'm sure you've lived so much on this ranch, and for you to bring a little piece of it to us with all of this knowledge that you have is so amazing to be able to hear everything. And I want to give you the opportunity to tell us about what you hope the legacy of X Diamond Ranch leaves for future generations and all of the work that you've done.
Well, that's a tough one, but of course, the hope is that it can continue on and perpetuate the lifestyle, and not just the lifestyle, but the lifestyle is the legacy, and the legacy is what it's done, what it contributes, and what it needs to continue to contribute, not only just for the well-being of feeding the people, but for the well-being of watersheds, wildlife populations. There's a saying that says in all of us, there's just a bit of wildness. Some of us might have a little more of it in us than others, but we need to figure out how to protect this open space and allow this opportunity for people to make that connection to the beauty and the wildness of what's out there, the lifestyle, the Creator's greatest sermons, I guess, under the stars of the canopy of heaven.
Yeah. The most beautiful part of this is that everybody encapsulates a distinct area of the Western lifestyle. What is one lesson that you've learned from the land that you feel we can all apply to our own lives?
The land was created, or the natural resource base, the land that I live on, was created under the guise of multiple use. And I think everybody has to recognize that is what it is. It has the capacity to provide for multiple uses. This idea that we have to have a single purpose use of our land is not a healthy advocacy. It was created, no matter whether you're talking about a dinosaur grazing it or whatever, there's always been a multiple use across our landscapes. And we have to continue to promote the health of those landscapes through well-managed and I'm going to say scientific use of those landscapes. You have dominant plants, you have recessive plants, you have seasonal plants. All of those factors that are across that landscape have to be given consideration in order to promote the natural state. And cattle are just they're a tool and a partner. I think of my cows as partners in creating a healthy landscape.
Well, that's what it sounds like. Everything you've learned and everything you were able to encapsulate is being able to find a balance in life, which is beautiful. And hopefully one day we'll be able to see the ranch as well, because in the pictures it looks amazing and beautiful.
Well, it's a unique place, and one of my purposes is, in what I've done there, is to create opportunities for people that, in my way of saying it, have never been as lucky as I am to have grown up in a place like that.
Yeah.
It's to create opportunities for people to come there. We have a private fishery on a beautiful stream, the Little Colorado River. We have the market. We have cabins. We have the museum. We have hiking, all those bird watching, all those kinds of things. And hopefully for a lot of people, it provides a reason or an opportunity for them to come and experience the X Diamond.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They'll be able to live it themselves and be able to capture a little piece of everything, like you mentioned. Well,
that's
Wink,
the idea.
Yeah.
Capture a little bit.
Capture a little bit of it all. Like you said, the chocolate doesn't hurt anybody.
A little chocolate never hurt anybody. Life's short, so eat your dessert first.
And definitely. I love that. Well, Wink, it was an absolute honor to talk to you today. And I am so, so happy we were able to receive you in the National Cowgirl Museum and Hall of Fame, and that tomorrow you will be officially inducted into the Hall of Fame with everybody else who partakes in this amazing place that lives with all of the stories of all the women who shaped the West.
Well, I'm hardly ever speechless, but I think it's incredible for your organization to recognize all of the aspects that are a part of what women do on the Western landscapes, whether it's being a saddle maker or an artist or a rancher like me. I think it's commendable and very valuable that we do these kinds of things that you do to promote knowledge and education for people that aren't connected to our part of the world. Somehow education is a key part to creating an appreciation for what we have.
Yeah.
And so I'm overwhelmed, but very appreciative of what you do.
Yeah, well, it's an honor. And as you mentioned, it's capturing every part of the Western lifestyle and bringing everybody together and having all of those people sit in that room together and we all learn from each other.
I guess a lot of people I've had a lot of people have made contact and connected with me. And my feeling of it is I've never done anything that was exceptional. I only did what was necessary to do and promote and fulfill the role that I guess I was born into. But the end of that is it is great that you all and others, SRM, whatever, recognize that, and I'm very appreciative that I have the opportunity to be recognized for the work that I've done, even though to me it's just fulfilling a role that I had to do, just doing things that I had to do.
Yeah.
It was my job.
Yeah. I see you and how you speak about everything, and it's your purpose. It's your purpose, and you've executed your purpose in life in an exceptional way. You've done it in an exceptional way. And it's amazing that you say that it's out of necessity, that, you know, you've done all this, but it's been exceptional. So it's well deserved, and it's an absolute honor for you to be a part of this group.
Well, it is an honor for me to be here. It's an honor for me to be here.
Well, thank you. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're very welcome.
I learned so much. I hope everybody that watches learns just as much as I did. You are a national treasure. That is as simple as we can put it. You are a national treasure, and it's an absolute honor for you to be here.
Well, if you meet a cowboy, that's God blessing you. And I think of myself as a cowboy because that's the kind of work I've always done. Yeah. Flank calves, rope cows, branded, those kinds of things. So when I say it that way, it's because that's the role. And it's God blessing you when you meet one.
Amazing. Well,
Thank
we've
you.
all been blessed here, and everybody who's going to watch this is going to be blessed for sure.
I hope so. I hope so.
Most definitely. Thank you, Wink.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
If it's hard, you're doing it wrong. And I thought, he was talking about saddle making, but then we talked about it more, and that pretty well applies to all of life.
Yeah.
That if it's difficult, you're not doing it right, figure out the right way to do it, or figure out the right way for you to do it.